So here's an interesting story. I don't know exactly where I read this, but it was something about the ornaments and the decorations in the ceiling at Walt Disney or in Disney World restaurants. You know Disney World or Disneyland, these Disney theme parks, amusement parks, whatever they're called. I haven't been in one myself, by the way. Maybe I'll go one day, maybe not if I get the chance. We shall see. Supposedly, what I'm being told is up in the ceiling in some of these restaurants, there are certain ornaments and decorations that are hidden like beyond the lighting rack and the racks that support the lamps and the lights and the chandeliers and whatever of the restaurant. Like these tiny little small ornaments and decorations and things that hardly anybody sees unless they're actively looking for it. In other words, an Easter egg. And if you spot one of these and then you go to the next restaurant and the next restaurant after that, all in Disney World amusement parks, you sort of like begin to familiarize yourself with it. And it's kind of like something that you associate with Disney World. And then you pass that knowledge on to your kids. Now they become addicted to hunting out the next Easter eggs. And then then your kids pass that knowledge on to their kids. And it continues for generations and generations and generations. A multinational legacy. Multi-generational, legacy and a hunt. Something else. Supposedly, the late Steve Jobs' father was some sort of an art collector of some sorts. He would keep these various items, cupboards and cabinets included. And in the rear end of the cabinets, the side facing the walls that nobody ever seen or that nobody ever saw, some of those plates were supported or held in place by very, very beautiful screws that hardly anybody or that essentially nobody would ever see. That could stay in place for hundreds of years probably. The point, noble art is noble because it contains these Easter eggs. And if you know about one of these Easter eggs, one of those screws in that particular sort of cabinet or cupboard, then you want to hunt out the next Easter egg in the next sort of, or in the next cupboard or cabinet that you're seeking out. I'm also hearing stories about how Steve Jobs was inspired to insert a pair of very, very strong screws on the back end of the iPhone so that the iPhone essentially couldn't be torn apart. Precisely because it was meant to be a piece of art. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not, but that's beside the point. The point is, these Easter eggs, they persuade you into keep wanting more. That's why it's kind of an art, that's why it's kind of an achievement to keep like an iPhone or one of these cabinets, or keep count and tally of how many Disney World restaurants you visited and seen those ornaments inside of. Even if they're just tiny, minute little things, like these little spikes or whatever, that might be hidden beneath a light bulb or whatever, that's hardly visible to the naked eye. The point of all this, just to show you how inserting these nice little Easter eggs can make for massive persuasion and a great way of promoting your business. This actually reminds me in closing about one of the perhaps best Donald Duck drawing cartoon artists named Don Rosa, who in the opening cartoon window of each each story would hide the letters DUCK, which stood for dedicated to Uncle Ken from Keno, because his full name was Keno Don Rosa, I think. I don't know if he's still alive. I hope he is, but I think his health has badly deteriorated. He might have passed away. I don't know. And Uncle Carl was Carl Barks, the famous Donald Duck comic book writer and artist, who I think he wrote and drew a lot of Donald Duck comics back in the 60s and 70s, and obviously is sort of a legend. That's also another Easter egg to look for. And obviously this brings me to the rub. The whole tradition about Easter eggs. How can you implement that in your business and attract more customers who turn out to be loyal, long-term clients of yours who will pass on this legacy for generations?